I'm immediately clicking for Instagram or, generally Instagram is my usage, just needing some sort of sensory input to just fill dead brainwaves pretty much. I habitually turn to it and that frustrates me. I find it just takes away from my day rather than adding to it.
Hello, I'm Delaney Ruston, primary care physician, creator with Lisa Tabb of the 4 Screenagers movies, and this is Parenting in the Screen Age, a podcast about discovering the best ways to help our youth and ourselves navigate our rapidly changing digital world. And yes, we recently changed our name from the Screenagers podcast to Parenting in the Screen Age. Teens and young adults often share with me their concerns about social media, how much time they spend on it, how they wish they could cut back, and how difficult it is to actually do so. At the top of the show, you heard from a college student who's been trying to reduce her social media use and is feeling frustrated by how hard it is. Meanwhile, recently, a mom asked me if there was a program that could help her daughter, who has been trying to cut back but keeps finding it to be a real struggle. I had to tell her the truth. There are very few programs out there specifically designed to help young people with this challenge. But I was glad to share something encouraging, Boosting Bravery, a free peer-to-peer or peer-to-near-peer program that I developed together with the Screenagers team and with input from dozens of teens. It's designed to empower young people to support each other in making healthier, more mindful choices around screen use. The program can be launched as a new club or integrated into an existing club at schools. And if you're interested in bringing the program to your school, just head over to screenagersmovie.com, go to the resources page, and you'll find it there. And it's free. And now, in today's episode of Parenting in the Screen Age, I'm excited to explore research that looks at the reasons why teens, why humans, are pulled to social media, and what can be done to decrease use and make healthier online choices overall. The researcher who is my guest on the show today is Dr. Katie Davis, a leading expert on teens and technology. She's a professor at the University of Washington's Information School and co-directs the UW Digital Youth Lab and is the author of many research studies and 3 books exploring how technology shapes young people's learning, development, and mental well-being. I invited her to talk about one of her recent studies that dives deeply into why teens go onto social media, the in-the-moment emotional triggers, and what they choose to do on the sites. In this case, Instagram, and how those choices then impact their mood and overall well-being. You'll find a link to the full study in the show notes. I really feel this study and other things that we discuss can help young people and us adults gain really valuable insights that can help decrease mindless scrolling and other online unwanted habits. And I'm doing something new in this episode. I asked the college student you heard earlier to listen to my conversation with Dr. Davis and record her reaction, reflecting on whether anything she heard might help her with her goal of cutting back. So be sure to stick around after the interview to hear her thoughts. Okay, let's dive in. Katie, it is such a delight to have you on the show, particularly because you're very close to where I live. You're at UW as a professor there, which is wonderful.
That's right. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
The reason I thought of you, because you do so much work really focused on the teen experience around social media, the good, the bad, the issue of how to have more balance. And the goal of today is to give insight to teens and young adults through your research and the efforts you've done to help them that I think could be really useful.
Fantastic. That sounds great.
I would love you to explain this research you did and actually how you conducted it.
Sure, absolutely. And I need to credit, it was not just me doing this research, but we've got a great group at the University of Washington of PhD students and faculty, and we're, dedicated to understanding teens' experiences on social media and other emerging technologies. Recently, researchers have started to look at what are teens actually experiencing moment from moment and what are their emotional reactions. So we at the University of Washington have been doing a lot of this work where we ask teens to report on their social media use and how they're feeling about it on a daily, sometimes hourly basis, so we can get really fine-grained and understand, what are their experiences like, what's going well, what's not, and how are they responding. So for this study, that's what we did. We did what they call a diary study, where we sent phone-based daily surveys to teens over the course of a week, and they had to tell us in a detailed way what they were doing. For this study, we focused specifically on Instagram. We wanted to get a sense of what drives teens to even open up Instagram. What features were they interacting with? Who were they interacting with? Things like that. And their emotional responses. How were they feeling about their social media experiences? So we could really start to get a good sense of the relationship in the moment of what teens are doing on social media and how it's making them feel in the moment.
And you asked them how they were feeling right before they went on, or at least their motivation for going on.
Yeah, so we wanted to get a sense of what drives teens to even open up Instagram or, their favorite social media. And we found there are three main drivers to open up their Instagram account. So one is what we call escape, just to kind of, maybe something stressful is happening in their life. Maybe they're having an argument with a friend or a parent, or there's a big test coming up or something like that. Or maybe they're bored and they just want to escape the boredom. So there are a lot of different escape motivations. The other kind of motivation is engagement. So actually going on a little bit more intentionally to engage with friends or content that they are really passionate about, or look to learn something new. And then the third driver is actually a driver of the platform itself. So the way the platform is designed kind of pulls you in by sending notifications. And so teens told us a lot of the time that they would see all these notifications that they're getting and start to feel a bit of anxiety when they mounted. And it was kind of, okay, well, I better open it up just to see who's commenting, who's responding, and kind of get those notifications out of the way. Almost as if at least I do with my email. When I start to see my emails accumulating, I start to get a bit panicky and need to clear out my inbox, that type of thing. So to escape, to engage, and then just to manage the platform itself and the demands that it's making on teens' attention.
The other way that you talked about it was mindless diversions versus deliberate acts.
Those are the behaviors that they're engaging in when they're actually on a social media platform. So they may go there to escape. They may go there to engage with friends. Once they're there are two main categories of behaviors that they engage in. One is these kind of mindless diversions. So things like browsing your feed, watching reels and stories. I'm sure we can all relate to those ourselves. And then the other kind is more deliberate acts, like talking with friends, sharing memes, searching for specific information, or maybe even posting. Actually, teens don't post a ton. They're far more likely to just consume.
I know.
Yeah. But some, it was certainly a minority in our sample, but some do post. And if they do, they put a lot of effort into that.
What I loved, one of your findings, is that if one of their emotions was boredom, which is an emotion, it's kind of an emotion of disengagement, it often resulted in more boredom.
Yes. Yeah, we call it boredom in, boredom out. So it was very rare for a teen to say, I was bored, so I went on Instagram and then I was not bored anymore. That's very rare. Usually what we hear is, oh, I was bored, so I went on and then I just felt even more bored than I was before. So boredom in, boredom out was certainly something that we found. Absolutely.
It's counterintuitive to me. I mean, part of the reason this is so important that we're talking about this is, as a clinician and somebody who works with teens through Screenagers and in my clinic, it happens all the time that when I ask how are they dealing with anxious feelings, sadness, all sorts of hard emotions, boredom, they often say their number one way is going to screens. And it would seem to me that it would take away that boredom feeling. And so I'm really surprised by the finding and would want to hear your thoughts behind it?
Well, in a previous paper, we really did kind of dig into why is it that so many teens feel bored on Instagram and other social media sites. I've been studying teens' social media experiences for 20 years now, and it's really changed. Social media platforms have changed so much, and the content has changed so much. There's so much irrelevant content now. In another study, we actually did very in-depth social media tours with teens where we spent an hour and a half with them as they went through their social media feeds and looked at specific parts of the platform together with us. And just so much of it is irrelevant to them. But you never know. It's the whole idea of variable rewards. Maybe you're going to come across something that is funny or really amusing, but the vast majority of it is kind of boring, and you have to kind of scroll through it just to get through to something that's interesting.
That definitely jives. I can see that curiosity, that desire for that reward, and dopamine is a motivational hormone as well as the actual reward. So it's motivating to keep look. The interesting thing, when you did that last study where you were really looking for an hour and a half at their actual feeds, how long ago was that? And do you think that's even become more irrelevant? I am impressed with the number of ads, for example, that teens are getting on Instagram, etc.
Yeah, so this was pretty recent, less than a year and a half ago. And I would say things have not changed too much. There are definitely feature tweaks, new features being added all the time, but I would say the experience is pretty similar today.
So boredom in, boredom out. I mean, it's a wonderful, important research finding that teens experience when they're just thinking, well, I do get now and then something really interesting. But if they ask themselves that right before they're going to open up the app, it might be like, whoa, wait a sec. There's a good chance I'm going to still feel bored. Is there some other way that I want to deal with this emotion of boredom?
Exactly.
I want to go back to the escape, engagement, and manage. So can we turn now to what teens who are reported they were going on Instagram to escape? Can you talk about that?
What we did was for those teens who went on to escape, so whether it was something stressful or boredom or whatever that escape motive was, there could be so many different reasons. What we noted was, there were actually different kinds of pathways from motivation to the experience, the behavior that they're having on social media, through to the emotional reaction. And some of those pathways we identified as being adaptive, but others were less adaptive, I would say maladaptive. So I'll give you an example of an adaptive pathway. So that involves escape. So, going on to social media because you're stressed about an upcoming test. You go on, you get a quick little boost, a quick little mood boost. You feel, that was a funny video about cats or dogs or whatever it was. And then you go on your way and you're feeling good. So that's great. But, it was all too easy for teens to go down that route, but then get sucked into just keep on scrolling. And then all of a sudden they either are just scrolling and being totally sucked in, or sometimes they would be scrolling through, they got their little mood boost, but then they encountered some sort of triggering content that made them even more stressed. And so then all of a sudden something that was kind of working out well for them quickly stopped working out. It was just so unreliable, and that has a lot to do with the way the platform is designed.
More after this break. Before we dive back in, I wanted to let you know about our 4 Screenagers documentaries, which focus on helping kids and teens navigate the challenges of this digital age. We created these films to be screened in schools and at community events. Over 20,000 hosts have shown them thus far. Along with the movies, we provide discussion guides, promotional materials, and other tools so that you can easily organize a truly impactful event for your community. And if your school wants to use the movies in the classroom, we have options for that too, along with a full curriculum of lesson plans designed for various grade levels. To learn more about the movies or inquire about becoming a host, visit screenagersmovie.com. There's a link in the show notes. Now back to the show.
The fact that people on social media are going to be, particularly teens, more likely to be triggered by some negative stuff, comparisons and things like that. And Hope Labs research a few years back that showed if you're at a low state to begin with, you're more likely to report that you had negative experiences on the app, that you felt worse on the app than if you come to the app in a higher emotional, happier emotional state. So this question of before going on social media that my friend's daughter, anyone could ask themselves is, am I going on right now to escape? And am I aware of the fact that I could actually get triggered in a way that I feel worse? And is there something else rather than social media that's a more reliable way that I could get out of or alter this low emotional or difficult emotional state that I'm currently in?
I think that is great advice, is just asking yourself, why am I opening this? And given what I know about social media and how it's such an unreliable tool for this kind of thing, is this really the best thing for me right now? Or maybe I should reach out to a friend directly or watch a funny YouTube clip that I keep. Everyone has their own favorites, videos that they like to see. So maybe go to that and then turn it off.
Yeah. I mean, there's tricky things about YouTube, but it is my personal delight. Some nights during the week, I go to YouTube because it's a For You page, like all of these, just for everyone to know. It's all curated, everything, unless you really work hard on Instagram and whatnot to say, hey, just feed me, or Facebook, feed it to me as it comes. Don't curate. And I get to watch lots of choreographed dance, which I adore, or
That's my go-to, choreographed dance.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh, how great. I know. The talent is unbelievable. I will watch one or two movie trailers. Last night, I said to a friend who texted me, I said, I'm doing my favorite thing, which is behind the scenes of filmmaking. So that was some YouTube ones that I love.
Great.
And then and some stand-up comics. Those are my kind of go-to to YouTube. And it's really lovely. I don't get negatively triggered. I mean, very rarely. So it is a nice 10-minute. I don't have the problem where I overly do it. I'm lucky in that regard. The one thing that I wanted to ask, which I think is another phrases that young people and ourselves can use, is the idea of, am I doing mindless diversions or deliberate acts? And your research found that when the teenagers were doing deliberate acts, they were more likely to experience emotions such as self-confidence, pride, trust, gratitude. Can you say a little bit about deliberate acts?
Yeah. So the deliberate acts are things like, I'm going to go on and I'm going to connect with a friend, or even just, oh, my friend posted something funny, or I have something funny to post to my friend group. You know, it may not be so momentous, but it's something deliberate that you're doing, making a connection to someone or searching for specific information. Maybe there's a sports team that you follow or some skill that you're developing, like photography or music or something like that. And you want to find information to help you on that. So things that are deliberate, and also, of course, posting, which teens don't do a ton of, but that also would count as a deliberate act. So for the most part, deliberate acts were more likely than these more mindless diversions to lead to more self-actualizing emotions, as you just noted. So, but that isn't to say our conclusion was not that, oh, you should only go onto social media to engage in deliberate acts, because there is a place for, these quick mood boosts. These mindless diversions can be a nice tool. It's just that when they slip into mindless scrolling or they get interrupted with some triggering content, that's when things kind of don't go so well. And actually, in a previous paper, my colleagues and I call this the 30-minute ick factor of just after 30 minutes, you're scrolling through kind of mindlessly, not even paying attention. Then you kind of look up and say, where did the last 30 minutes of my life go? and you feel like nothing particularly meaningful happened. And it invariably started around 30 minutes. So that's why we call it this 30-minute ick factor. And when I share this with my students at UW, at the University of Washington, they often nod their heads. There's something about 30 minutes for some reason that it's this kind of internal clock that tells us, oh, we've been kind of wasting our time, not really engaging our brains very much, and we need to switch things up a bit.
But often they can't, or they don't, and they even go longer.
Some people, they'll just keep going. Others do respond and say, I got to get off. We do a lot of work imagining better designs of social media and actually co-designing new features alongside teens. And so in one of our projects called Locus, we've designed, it's called an app wrapper. It's a wraparound app where we control how teens enter into a social media platform. And the reason we do that is we want to just get them to pause a little bit and think about their intention for going onto social media, just to help reorient them away from this sort of mindless, habitual use of social media that so many of us, this is certainly not limited to teens, so many of us engage in, and just sort of reorient at the start towards something more intentional. And we've actually found that just that little reorientation, that little nudge to think about why you're going on, really helps teens to focus in and feel like the next few minutes of their social media experience is a little bit more intentional, a little bit more meaningful. Because ultimately teens are going on to have some sort of meaningful experience, whether that's to help them calm down and regulate their emotions, or to connect with a friend. And so, we're trying to help them to get what they're there to on the social media platform for.
Yes, and the concept of nudge is one that's become quite familiar with the Richard Thaler, the preeminent scholar in this area who's done this research. My question to you, is this app such that anytime any of the main social media apps are opened, it gives a message like, okay, what are you feeling, or why do you want to go on this? How does it actually work?
Well, we can actually program it to work in a number of different ways. What we have found is that it actually doesn't take too many nudges to encourage teens to just reorient. And actually, there's quite a lot of research in the field of human-computer interaction showing that if you do too many nudges, users start to get annoyed and then they'll just stop using it. So even just once or twice a day at the start, maybe the first time that they enter Instagram or TikTok for the first time during the day, that just is a helpful reorientation that kind of guides them throughout the rest of the day.
What are they actually seeing?
We can push any sorts of messages to them. We actually worked during the course of a summer with a group of teens to come up with some messages that resonated with teens. We tried as researchers to come up with some good questions. And when the teens that we worked with saw them, they thought, no, those are not going to cut it with teens. So they helped us come up with some good questions, but questions, very simple questions, things like, what would make your time on Instagram feel worthwhile? Or even getting them to plan and think about what will they do after they're on TikTok or Instagram or whatever platform it is.
I like that one.
Yeah, so it's getting them to think about what do they want to get out of that experience and what's going to happen after, just so that they don't get too sucked in just endlessly scrolling on whatever platform it is.
When you tested that in research, what did you find?
Well, we were actually amazed. We gave a group of teens this app and we just kind of let them go for 2 weeks. And the first thing is we were amazed that they used it. They actually really enjoyed it. They liked having those reminders. They didn't find it too annoying. And we found that from the pre to the post test that we conducted, we actually found that their self-reported levels of absent-mindedness on social media decreased, which is a good thing. Mm-hmm. And their feelings of meaningful social media use increased, and also their feelings of self-control. There's a lot of research on, digital self-control, social media self-control. So we included that as a measure. And all of these were statistically significant. So, we're continuing to develop this work.
I'm particularly interested when you ask that question of what are you going to do afterwards? My hunch is that it would prevent some from even entering in, or at least decrease the amount of time, because once they do a little bit of that forward thinking and realizing I'm going to be in the same boat and in fact I will have lost time, or I will kind of feel crappy, because many of my patients and teens I work with say they often feel worse after being on social media.
We did get a lot of qualitative data in interviews, and there are a lot of teens saying that, just getting questions like that made them think about why they were going on in the first place. And some of them said, well, I didn't actually have a good reason to go on, so I just didn't bother. Or it really focused my attention on wanting to connect with a friend rather than just mindlessly scroll. So we do have that qualitative data that definitely supports that.
So for my friend whose daughter is struggling with this, and believe me, I know many other kids that age who come to me and say, I'm really struggling, like I don't want to be on it that much. One of the things that they can do, they could have a little sticky note, however they want, is and keep in their head, most importantly, the questions of why am I going on right now, and what will I do when I get off of social media?
Absolutely. Ours is a research app, more of a proof of concept type thing, but apps like OneSec do the same sort of thing to just help reorient you to something that feels more meaningful and intentional.
Now I want to return to the college student we heard from at the start of the episode, someone who's been trying to cut back on her Instagram use. This was a first for me. I asked her to listen to the full interview and share her thoughts. So here she is after hearing my conversation with Katie Davis.
I think the first thing that Katie's research brought up for me, and just her speaking about it, I never thought about the post question. Like, what will this have fulfilled for me? What am I going to do next? And the first thought about applying that to is a lot of people, including myself, using social media, using that brain dead doom scrolling time right before you go to bed, which has been proven to be detrimental to your brain and body health, to feed yourself all of this essentially nonsense right before you go to sleep. You're not turning off your brain in the way that you think you are. And the very first scenario that I thought of in asking myself, what am I going to do after? Well, I'm going to go to sleep. But am I really? Like, it's really lengthening the amount of time that it really takes my mind and body to shut down, because I'm still giving myself input. And so it's not going to make my eyes heavy for me. And so immediately just applying it to that scenario, if I asked myself that question, what are you going to do after this? And if the answer to that being sleep, it would stop me immediately. After ending the podcast, I was sitting here folding laundry as I listened to it, and the podcast was over, and I was already like in the mode of having something that my mind was paying attention to. And in that sense, it was productive. And then I found myself turning to my phone as I turned off the podcast. And the first thing my brain went to open was Instagram. And I'm like, but why? What was going to be the outcome afterwards? And so I was just like, I lifted up my hands and I was like, this is not necessary. And I opened Spotify and I played music instead.
I want to extend a big thank you to Katie Davis for our insightful interview today. You can learn more about her and her research by checking out the show notes at screenagersmovie.com. I'm also grateful to the college student who shared her valuable perspectives with us. And a quick reminder, if you're interested in helping young people build skills for more balanced and healthier screen time, be sure to check out Boosting Bravery, our peer-to-peer program that empowers students to support each other. It's available to bring to any school for free, and you can find the details at screenagersmovie.com in the resource section, or just type Boosting Bravery into the search bar.
What a gift that you chose to tune into the show today. The Screenagers movement is all about doing this work together. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast to get each episode automatically. And the more subscribers, the easier it is for others to find us. And if you give it some stars, that helps even more. Check out screenagersmovie.com to get resources for each episode,
to learn about our 4 Screenagers movies and to find my weekly parenting blog, Tech Talk Tuesdays. Curious about a specific topic? Use the search bar to get answers from our many blogs and podcast episodes. Finally, I love hearing from you, so email me at delaney@screenagersmovie.com. What ideas do you have for future episodes? Today's show was produced by the following people: me, your host, Delaney Ruston, Lisa Tabb, Rebecca Tolan, and Robbie Carver.